Hello and welcome to the News Minute. The death of Professor GN Saibaba has raised uncomfortable questions about the Indian judicial system. To talk about this, I have with me Henri Tiphange, the Executive Director of People's Watch, one of the leading human rights organizations in the country. And before I go across to him, here is a quick request and a reminder. News Minute Tamil, and News Laundry, we are a complete ad free platform. We are not dependent on ads from the government, from political parties, or from the corporates. We are dependent on you. If you like our work, if you want us to support what we are doing, do subscribe to the News Minute by becoming a paid member of the News Minute and the News Laundry and support independent journalism. So, thank you so much for talking to us. I want to begin this interview by asking, is the time has come for the Indian judiciary to reflect upon itself and do some course correction?
Well, let me first of all appreciate you, Shabbir, and News Minute for having decided to spend time on Sai Baba. And I want to assure you all that when I was there yesterday, physically present with some of our colleagues from Human Rights Defenders Alert India, I did speak in public that I was there not as an individual, not as a human rights activist alone, and we represented all of you. We represented international organizations. We represented the UN special rapporteurs and a host of Indian national platforms who have all expressed solidarity to Sai Baba, not from now, not it is starting from the year 2013 onwards. And I think that is what is the greatest tribute that can be played. But what is important today for my discussion is to recall that Sai Baba was was um, was suffering from polio from a very young age, and I yesterday met a professor during the last rites who told me that when he obtained his gold medal from the university in Andhra Pradesh, he came crawling, and Professor Haragopal was next to me, just demonstrating to me that in those days of no wheelchairs, you had Sai Baba going to receive his gold medal, but crawling on the stages as he proceeded to receive his gold medal. This is a story of a young boy who therefore owed everything to his mother, whose mother carried him to school, whose mother wanted to ensure that her son was different and her son was competent in terms of education. And this is what landed him today as an intellectual. This is what landed him today as a prolific writer. This is what landed him today as a passionate mover of people who are from vulnerable sections. You call them Adivasis, you call them Dalits, you call them Muslims, you call them by any name. Sai Baba's concerns were about them. And in the recent address that he made to us on the 22nd of June 24, after his formal release in Delhi on the wheelchair, he told us, the audience there, that a human rights defenders movement of the country has to be committed to those people in prisons who have no voices at all. And we in turn said, you should be our ambassador to raise these issues. You should be the critic who continues to critique movements like us to ensure that we are focused on these issues. So we have lost, this country has lost an academic, this country has lost an intellectual, this country has lost a writer, all of which were focused on the most vulnerable sections. And he was concerned about his teacher. He was concerned to be a good teacher. And therefore, there were thousands of his own students. I had a student from Tiruvarangam, in Ramanathapuram yesterday, who made me speak through his teacher, saying, Sai Baba was my teacher in Delhi University. And today I am proud to be in a position, and he also wanted to control him. So there are thousands and thousands of poor students from poor backgrounds to whom the rich intellectual meant a lot. For him, Andhra was not his base. His base became Delhi because it is from Delhi that he operated. And the funeral unfortunately took place in his hometown, Andhra Pradesh, in the house of his own brother, in the residential premises of his own brother. I've just returned from there. I might turn emotional because of what I saw and what effect it has had on me as a person. That apart, I think it is time today, Shabbir, to start with words of hope, words of warning to people who matter in this country, that was made as early as on 30th of April 2019. And this 30th of April 19 comes from a whole body of UN experts who call for his release as a human rights defender. This, this call was signed by the Special Rapporteur on Persons with Disabilities, the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, all of the United Nations, the Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, to the from the special rapporteur on torture and the special rapporteur on extrajudicial summary and arbitrary exemptions executions. This is a remarkable document of joint signatories that were made as early as in April 2019. But unfortunately, it fell on ears that refused to hear. It fell on eyes that refused to read, which includes not only the National Human Rights Commission, but also includes all judges of the Supreme Court of India. And here I want to be candid. I don't think we can escape as defenders from bringing out the truth. Again,
The
again,
question here is that here the Supreme Court's intervention was important, but the Supreme Court did not intervene for a very long time. His bails kept getting rejected, his parole was denied, and even when he was acquitted by the court, a special bench was constituted, and there was a hearing on a Saturday, and then the judgment was overturned.
yes, this is very, very important. And there are many more things which are important. Before coming, permit me to recall the 2019 call that was also made in the United Nations experts, and where it was made at that point of time by the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders and the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights on persons with disabilities. So the international community had played its role. What happened here within the country? Within the country, I have had the humble opportunity to work and still fail. And I say I work and still fail. Our interventions before the NHRC at that time started in the year 2008, 2013. And people forget this date, 2013. And it was at the time when they came to arrest him in the campus. And when they came to arrest him in the campus and the students protected him, we immediately rushed to the National Human Rights Commission of India for immediately intervening at that point of time, which they actually refused to do so at that point of time. Thereafter, we intervened again in the year 2015, in September 2015, again on 2/1/2016, again on 17/5/2022, and for the last time on 19/3/2024. I hold the following people responsible for the dismissal and closure of these complaints: Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, Justice Kurian Joseph, acting as the chair of the NHRC, Justice Dattu, Justice Arun Mishra. These are people who have to put their heads down in shame and take responsibility for their carelessness, for their negligence, because they were a body of people who are determined, who have been established only to protect human rights defenders. And if they could not protect Saibaba, it is a shame that they could not protect Saibaba. I need to recall, Shabbir, no, it was 2021. I was called by Datu for a meeting, and I was not a member of any committee. And I went before Justice Datu. This was 19, to be correct, it was 19. This was the second raid of Stan Swami that had taken place on the 12th of June, and it was the following day on the 13th. And before he started his meeting, I raised a point of order, particularly reminding Justice Dattu, then the chairperson, you have two people to save. One is Stan Swami, whose house has been raided for the second time yesterday, 12th of June. And I said, we have Sai Baba in prison. We have Sai Baba in prison who is still alive, but I hope you will be able to ensure that nothing happens to his life. Nothing had turned as a result of that. So there was no lack of reminders to the NHRC. There were plenty of reminders to the NHRC. Here is an NHRC which took a side, an NHRC led by Supreme Court judges, which took a side on the side of the NIA and refused. The orders will speak for themselves. And then I come to the Supreme Court itself. The Supreme Court had the best opportunity to intervene. The shameless case in this entire episode is that this case lacked. He was released on bail twice. In the year 2015, when he was released on bail, I had the pleasure of meeting him in Fortis Hospital, a hospital which I had to occupy later for something else. And I saw him in bed. I could see the pain he was suffering from the nerves that were cut. And I'm talking about 2015. On medical grounds, he was released on bail. That bail did not last him for long, because that bail ended in December 2015 and he had to get back. And he was just getting a variety of treatments to strengthen these nerves, which are because people had to carry him in the arms for every movement of his. Is it not a shame that the NHRC could not intervene at this point of time? I recall a former joint secretary of the NHRC, who later became a special rapporteur of the NHRC, Madam Jaleja, recommended after visiting him in prison that this is a fit case for an expert team of doctors from All India Institute of Medical Science to visit him. We reiterated that. We quoted that madam's prayer to the chairperson and members. Never heard. Okay, the court acquits. The court convicts him. The state files an appeal. In the appeal, you have two judges who are determined to
The court acquits him.
the court the trial court convicts him, and as a
Yeah.
result of his conviction, he goes back to the same under cell. Now, a person with disabilities is covered by the Person with Disabilities Act that we have and the United Nations Conventions on Persons with Disabilities. And such a person should not have been kept in the prison in the under cell in Nagpur. And that is why people like us and many others across the globe today say this is an institutional murder, with the callousness, the negligence of prison authorities, of the state authorities in Maharashtra, as well as the authorities responsible in the National Human Rights Commission and the entire judiciary that was witnessing a 90% person with disabilities, wheelchair bound, who was kept as a convicted prisoner thereafter in the Nagpur jail. The appeal is filed before the Delhi High Court, and there are two judges, Justice Rohit Dio and Justice Anil Pansare. On 14th of October, gives him his first acquittal, very clearly saying that there was no valid sanction as mandated under the UAPA. Sanction was given after the trial had begun, and that the same was violative of Section 45(1) of the UAPA. This was the acquittal. The acquittal was followed by 15th October, the government taking an urgent appeal, matter being placed on a Saturday before Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice
Imar
and
Shah.
M.R. Shah, and his matter after 6 months. The man was released on 15th of October, 14th of October to be correct, and the man on 19th of April. Till then, this bench kept the matter pending. Imagine the pain of somebody who has been acquitted, who the state has gone on appeal. The Supreme Court wants to give priority. You have the Chief Justice of today who talks about his legacy. You have the Chief Justice who talks about how persons with disabilities and persons from the transgender community have to be dealt with. Here is a person with 90% disability, wheelchair bound. Where did his conscience go? Should he not have been given the priority at that point of time? 6 months later, on 19th of April 2023, the Supreme Court sends back the case to the High Court to consider it in detail and decide on merits. After that, in its August 2023, that the Chief Justice did something amazing, and this has to become public. It was this Chief Justice of India who was talking about his legacy, who transferred Justice Rohit Dio, who acquitted by Saibaba in October 22 and transferred him to Allahabad High Court. Here was a judge, again with a backbone, who said, I will not accept my transfer. I give in my papers for retirement. This is a sad history for Justice Chandachud and his collegium, then comprising Justice S.K. Kaul, Justice Sanjeev Khanna, Justice B.R. Gawai, and Justice Surya Kant. I think they are people who will now have to come in public and apologize to the people of this country that that transfer of a judge through their collegium was an act of betrayal to Sai Baba and the justice that had been delivered to him earlier, as early as in October 2022. It was only in March 2024, you all
Okay.
know, that he was finally found and not guilty, and we were able to get him out on public. And therefore, today I think,
Sir,
Shabir, the last word is that I don't think civil society can remain. We have got volumes of papers. All these volumes of papers belong to Vasanta. It belongs to the people who gave him solidarity from across the world, from across the world, from Brazil, from Africa, from Europe, from the United Nations, from the international human rights organizations, frontline defenders, World Organization Against Torture, the International Federation of Human Rights, you name it, they were all in solidarity with the special rapporteurs on actions taken. We will challenge all these people for their negligence before the Supreme Court of India. I think
sir,
the
talking
Jesuits,
about
the
yeah.
Jesuits, the Jesuits questioned the institutional murder of Justice of Father Stan Swami. Nobody is willing to take that case up today. The same will happen in the case of Sai Baba. We will all collectively take up this matter to ensure that the judiciary is told that they are wrong. The National Human Rights Commission is told they were totally callous, totally negligent in their entire actions. And if there is anybody to be held responsible, it is the National Human Rights Commission, it is the Maharashtra prison authorities, it is the Supreme Court, which all collectively, perhaps silently conspired to ensure that these kind of intellectuals, activists, academicians, teachers, a researcher does not continue in this country. And we feel very ashamed that we were in the process of ensuring that he got an international fellowship to leave
Hmm.
this country, to be able to be outside and write this history. Unfortunately, that history has not been written. But in all this, there is a silver lining, Shabir, and that silver lining has to be shown. When I met him and Vasanta in their house on the 24th of June this year, he was narrating that there was nobody to come forward to give him a house when he was thrown out of the university in the year 2021, and he was denied a house. The Times of India came out with a report on how every house they approached, every house owner was threatened by the police. See the dirty tactics that are played. But the silver lining was that there was a retired IAS officer couple. And this retired IAS officer couple offered their house, modified their house, and gave him that house even when he was in custody to be able to use for his wife. The one who gave him the house, the husband is no more. He died at the age of 97. His wife is still living. And I think in all these difficult circumstances where we are bashing institutions, let us also celebrate people like this IAS officer who came from the finance ministry, I understand. There are hearts in this country which spoke for Sai Baba, and they did their actions silently. Nobody perhaps has ever said this. And I think it is right on my part, because there are thousands of people, hopeful people in this country who hope for justice. And I think one among them or two among them happened to be this IAS couple who had given them access to their house, modified their house so that they were restored their dignity. The time when he was restored his dignity, his life has been pulled away from him through this systemic institutional murder that all these institutions of justice have to account for.
Sir, talking about Sai Baba's activism, for this generation, Sai Baba is known as someone who had Maoist link. He was portrayed as a man, like Meena Kandasamy described him as, he was portrayed as a man with dangerous ideas, dangerous plans. Who exactly is Dr. Sai Baba? Can you recall his activism, his intervention uh, during the Operation Green Hunt, during the time of the UPA regime?
Well,
What
I think it is important for this generation to know that these are accusations which are easily thrown on people. These are made on a variety of people. Anybody who thinks correctly in this country, anybody who thinks on the right path in this country, and any intellectual who takes his students as well as his research and his writing towards the poorest of the poor, and in his case, it was the Adivasis, and to start with, it was the Operation Green Hunt that brought him into light. So it is his writings, his teachings, and his classrooms. Let us be clear. These people were not writers who did not translate it into action, and the ground of his action always happened to be his classrooms. Imagine what an English teacher could do. Imagine what an English teacher could do. A marvelous English teacher who was able to take his concerns, and his concerns always happened to be about the poor. He was always specific in any of the fora he spoke. He was not concerned about himself. He was happy he was out. But he spoke about Pandu Narote, who was his co-accused, who he could not save at all. And his concern was that he could not pay or find payment for the lawyers who had fought pro bono for Pandu Narote. So when we speak about Sai Baba, we talk about a Sai Baba who died after his release. I think Sai Baba would want us to talk about a death penalty that was granted to Pandu Narote in judicial custody. I think that was a death penalty, a case of death penalty that was given. And his was a release, which is now an institutional murder because of the callousness. So I think this younger generation, even of academics, and this younger generation doesn't mean we are talking about students. We are talking about academics who refuse to be truly independent, research oriented academics who place their research in the lives of people. And wanting that to take place, he has visited different parts of this country where the Adivasi, the peoples, indigenous peoples of our country live. And doing that will definitely bring anybody, including people like us. Shabbir, you may be sitting on the other side, I may be sitting on this side, but I'm sure these labels are also against us. And these are against us because we think of the poorest of the poor from their lens and try to highlight what their concerns, socio economic, political are. And since he possessed the capacity to intellectually analyze the state and its policies, he was dangerous to the state. And that is why the UAPA was used against him. And here is a case where we have an acquittal of a UAPA. We always talk about a UAPA against the BK16. We always talk about a UAPA with Umar Khalid and others still continuing to be in prison. Here is a UAPA which has been shown to be totally ineffective and totally falsely used. And I think it is high time the judiciary, if it has a conscience, and if Chandrachud wants to leave a legacy for the future, the legacy for the future should be that he challenges the UAPA and ensures that the UAPA has been the culprit, and they, as a judiciary, have also made mistakes in the past. If they have some journalists whose bails they have been very speedily taking forward, they could not give parole to Sai Baba to go and see his mother after she passed away. And that is something that Vasanta always suffers from. I could do so much for him, but I could never take him out for one day to be physically present for him to pay his last respects to his mother. Just imagine a mother who carried him on his lap and took him to school. That was his longing. Who prevented that? What was the NHRC doing? Do the NHRC not have a right to intervene in matters relating to human rights according to Section 12 of the Protection of Human Rights Act? They are to blame. They may have retired, but the ghost of Sai Baba, the ghost of thousands of people who stand with Gai Baba will be reeling around the houses of Arun Mishra, who had no conscience. He ran away from the NHRC on the 31st of May, leaving the NHRC headless, leaving the NHRC without four other members, and then ensuring that the NHRC today is a second deferred NHRC globally. Is it not a shame? Is it not a shame? And one of the cases that was considered by the international body was Sai Baba's case, is what I want to publicly say. So these are
Okay.
institutions which have to be questioned, and human rights defenders alert along with several other conscientious human rights platforms of this country will challenge this before the Supreme Court of India.
And one last question, sir, talking about the UAPA. The kind of draconian law it is, where the onus is on the accused to prove his innocence. In this case, the Supreme Court recently observed saying that bail is a norm even in UAPA cases. But when it comes to the case of Sai Baba, all these things were not considered. A person with 90% of disabilities was not allowed to go on parole. His bail was denied on medical grounds. Uh, why did that? Why did all this happen to Sai Baba? Just because he was branded as a Maoist, he was arrested under the UAPA?
No, I want to recall, and I'm recalling that because you today have the UN Mandela principles, and these Mandela principles relate to matters relating to prisons. Bail was denied, yes. Parole was denied, yes. But here was a person with disability, and I always have before me my own comrades who are persons with disabilities, and better human rights defenders than myself, who continuously keep us challenging that. Why was such a person to be kept in a prison that did not have one single feature for persons with disabilities to be there? Why had there to be a CCTV camera focused on his cell? Focused on his cell. Did we have him as a terrorist? And that is what we are asking these institutions. You could not give him bail. I don't want to say yes. There were reasons you did not grant him bail. You could not grant him parole. Yes. But what happened to your powers of ensuring that this person was placed in a hospital, as a hospital, with specialist care, and yet in judicial custody? Why did you not do that? That is something which they will have to remain to answer. Stan was moved almost at the last stage of his life. He was moved to that hospital where he ultimately breathed his last. Why was um, Sai Baba not moved similarly? This is something that will haunt, and this is something that we will raise, and this is something where the Indian judiciary, despite its greatest orders, they speak very well. They speak very passionately. We want them to speak passionately by recalling their orders, by looking back at their orders. And I hope, like Justice Thomas spoke, don't forget there have not been people who did not speak. Justice Thomas spoke in the case of Rajiv Gandhi killers, and he spoke from his conscience. And I hope we'll have people who speak from their conscience and then decide that their legacy was a legacy that they themselves are ashamed of. You can go globally and speak about disability. You can go globally and talk about persons with disabilities and the legislation we have. But never forget that decided not to move a person with disabilities who was convicted under a UAPA. I don't want to mince words. Moved to a place where a person with disability needed to be. That was not the Anda cell of Nagpur jail. It should have been a hospital, or the All India Institute of Medical Science in Delhi, or any other competent hospital with competent medical specialist attending on him in judicial custody. You refuse to do that. And that is a greater betrayal, not to an urban Naxal, not to a professor, but to a person with disability, that this country and the country's persons with disability will never, never, ever forget.
Right, sir. Thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your thoughts and views on Professor Saibaba's case. Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.